Hi, welcome to session 6. I'm talking all about being an entrepreneur right now. And my focus for this session is really about how you can make money and how you can be entrepreneurial where you are currently. Not so much how to start a business when you're 25 or 35 or 45. Remember that the most important tool you're going to have is the way you view money, your mindset around money. If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down and write it down over and over and over again until it's so ingrained that you couldn't unthink it. And that is mindset over skill set. It's important to have a skill set. It's important to know how to do things. It's important to read books. It's important to learn trades and crafts. It's important to know the skills around things. But you could know all the skills around things, and if you don't have the right mindset, if you don't think about it the right way, it won't ever matter. And so today, when we drill down and just look at entrepreneurial belief, entrepreneurial thought, mindset over skill set. It's been said before that being an entrepreneur, in fact, I have it in my studio. I stare at it. It's right here in front of me next to the camera. It says entrepreneur, somebody who jumps off a cliff and builds a plane on the way down. And to a degree, that's what it looks like. At the same time, that's also very naive. That's not the only way it looks like. That's not the only thing that happens. It's smart to get in a plane before you jump off the cliff, but you get my point. Being an entrepreneur and building a business or starting a business sometimes looks like you're in a plane and you're flying and everything's going great. And then you go, oh no, we're missing a wing. And so you run back and you start building the wing on the plane while you're flying it. Of course, it's all just an analogy. And you're like, all right, the wing looks great. We have a beautiful wing on this plane. And then you go, shoot, no one's flying it. And you run back up to the cockpit and you start flying again. And you go, oh, wait, we need to, and you get my point. Like there's always something. I'll tell you a couple of things that I've learned are the most important about being an entrepreneur is to be relentless in your thought process. But just because you're relentless in your thought process doesn't mean that there's not times to stop. There is a difference between stopping and quitting. One of the companies that I started that didn't make it, that I closed, I lost a bucket of money, about $120,000. But when you look at cost and you look at loss, there's direct cost and hard cost and indirect cost and indirect loss. In other words, I wrote checks for about $120,000 that I never got back. But how about what I could have been doing with all the time I spent? How about the money I could have been making with the 6 months or 8 months that I worked on that project and all the effort that went into it? Because I wasn't paying myself because I was writing expenses, right? So my work was free. My labor was no cost. But what I learned from it was more valuable. What I learned from it was more valuable than the loss itself. But when you think about expenses, you have direct and indirect. But I also want you to write this down. There's a portion of your life, right, that you're going to work to learn. And there's a portion of your life that you're going to work to earn. And think of it like being a doctor. Now, being a doctor, unless you go and open a medical practice, is not necessarily at all being an entrepreneur. Being a doctor, good or bad, there's no good or bad to me, right or wrong. There's no right or wrong around this. Being a doctor is learning a trade, it's learning a craft, and then being paid for it. And some doctors make really, really good money. But a great entrepreneur will usually earn more money. And a great entrepreneur will usually earn more money and have more freedom. You see, if you're a doctor and you become the greatest heart surgeon, well, that doctor, she's only making money when she's doing surgery. She's only making money when she has someone's chest open and she's operating. She's only making money maybe when she's teaching about it. She can't make money necessarily sitting on a beach somewhere unless she opens a practice someday. And that's where you move from being a practitioner to an entrepreneur. And it's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. There's no fault to it. I want you to live the life that you want to live. There's nothing wrong with being an incredible doctor, nothing wrong with being a great surgeon, nothing wrong with being the world's best attorney, nothing wrong with being an incredible teacher at a school. There's nothing wrong with being a fireman. There's nothing wrong. You get my point. There's nothing wrong with whatever road you choose to be on. But if you're listening to this right now, you're here because you want to listen to being an entrepreneur. So that's what we're going to focus on. A couple of thoughts. If you think about it like this, it's almost like having a side hustle. And a side hustle is best defined as something that doesn't earn the bulk of your money. So a side hustle might be, listen, here's my job. My job is this. I bag groceries at a grocery store. My job is this. I wash buses or I wash cars. My job is this. One of my jobs when I was younger, I was the cameraman for a local news station, and they would have never hired somebody my age. I was 14. They would have never hired somebody my age, except I knew the engineer at the TV station, and so the relationship got me the job. And like I've talked about so many times in these sessions with you, human capital, who you know and who knows you, who likes you, who will help you. It's going to be some of the biggest capital you'll ever have. Now, you can twist that around to mean different things. And that's, I mean, you can do whatever you want to with it, but who you know and who knows you is always going to matter. It's always going to be important. But it was one of my first jobs and I loved doing it. But you might look at a job and a side hustle being something different than that. And you might have a side hustle or a business that you start or run, and you might do that on the side for a year or 6 years. You might have a normal job, like an 8-to-5 job or whatever it is. You might have a normal job for 10 years while you're building one of your passions, while you're building something. And then someday it overtakes the job and you go, okay, I'm making enough money with this. I got to quit this. That's okay. You might just jump right into it and you might open a business. That's okay too. All right, here's some notes I wrote for you. Number one, seeing opportunity and seeing opportunity of making money is a habit. In other words, you get used to it and it becomes habitual. It's something that just becomes ingrained. For most people, seeing opportunity and seeing an opportunity or a pathway to make money on things or to provide services or make people's lives better and then make money because of that, for most people, that doesn't necessarily come natural. For me, it didn't come natural. I had to train myself to think, what's the opportunity here? What's the opportunity here? And one of the things that I'll do is this. I'll think when I'm in a business, I'll think, if this were my business, what would I do different? If this were my business, what would I do that would retain my customer for life? If this were my business, how could I provide better customer service necessarily without spending more money? Because as a business, right, like one of the golden rules of a business is that you don't just make money by profit. Excuse me, you don't just make profit by having more money. You make profit by controlling expenses. You could have lots of money coming in, but if you have lots of money going out, you've got no profit. And so if you want to earn a profit at some point, then you're going to have to learn how to control expenses. You're going to have to say, okay, I can't spend more than I make. But there might be a time in your business, like during a startup time or during a time that you're just getting ramped up. Of course, you're going to have more expense than income. That's for a different conversation, though. For today, I just want you to think, how do I manage expenses? How do I play red light, green light? Spend a little bit and stop, and then hold that money accountable until you find some result. Then you could put more money back into it. One of the greatest things about looking at being an entrepreneur at your age group is that you literally can't fail. Like you can't, like the worst thing that happens is you take a few $100s that you save up or you put together or you earn or whatever, $50 or $500, who cares? The worst thing that happens is that you end up trading that money for an experience. You end up trading that money for a lesson that you learn. That business that I opened, one of many that didn't work or never worked or ended up being closed, when I lost that direct $120,000 that I never got paid back for, the knowledge that I learned by losing the money, the knowledge I learned in the business, trust me, it was worth the expense. I look at losing money sometimes like I would paying for college. If you're going to go to an amazing college, it won't be free. You're going to pay for it. And People understand that and they go, yeah, that makes sense. If I'm going to become a doctor, I'm going to pay for med school. If I'm going to become an attorney, I'm going to pay for law school. If I'm going to become an incredible electrician or plumber, I'm going to pay for those trade schools. And for some reason, people somehow forget that having business loss is no different than that. So I like to look at it as just learning cost. It's what I paid to go to school. It's what I paid for my education. Like the classes you go to, like when you're learning how to be a business, or the conferences that you might attend, or the seminars that you might go to, those are all expenses for education. And I try to look at those as an investment instead of an expense. You know, buying a book for 20 bucks could be an investment instead of just an expense of 20 bucks. All right. So seeing opportunities to have it. Most things work. Most things will work. Nothing doesn't work. So what I mean by that is this: I just want you to try stuff. You can't go wrong. You're so young that you could lose the 500 bucks. You could spend the $500. Let's say you got a $500 budget or a $50 budget. You could spend all the money. The worst thing that happens is you don't have the $50 anymore. You're probably not going to live under a bridge. You're probably not going to not be able to pay the mortgage at your house because your parents probably do. And so one of the greatest things about thinking like an entrepreneur right now is you have this giant safety net underneath you. Now, if you're 18 or 20 or whatever age you might be, and you don't live at home and you're paying your own expenses, that tends to look a little bit different. And so what you would do is you would carve a little bit of money outside of those core expenses and you'd put that somewhere and you'd play with that. They say don't gamble money that you can't afford to lose. Don't bet money that you can't afford to lose. They also say don't loan money to a friend that you can't afford to never see again. Like if you loan your friend 10 bucks, they ought to pay you back. But if they don't, what are you going to do? You can't take the money. You can't force it. And so there's just a principle. If I loan somebody money, I want them to pay me back, and I might write a contract about it. But the better I know them, I mean, come on, I'm not gonna sue my best friend over $100. But you have this giant safety net. Now's the time to try things. Like now's the time. Don't wait till later. Right now is the time. Put together your birthday money that you got and do something with it. Find a way to double it. Find a way to make a little bit more with it. And what will happen is the brain begins to see the world as like a puzzle. And the brain begins to see the world in the way that you go, all right, if I do this and this and this, I could take my $10 and make it $12. I need you to understand me on this. I want you to think in percentage more so than sum. Here's what I mean. If you could learn how to make 20% of $100, that's 20 bucks. If you can learn how to make 10%, or excuse me, 20% of $10, that's $2. Now, let's be clear. Making $2 is not going to make you wealthy. The $2 won't, but the knowledge of how to make 20% on something will. And if you could make 20% on $10 and then you get good at it, and you begin to make 20% on $20, that's $4. Then you make 20% on $1,000 someday. Well, that's a couple hundred. Then you make 20% on 100,000, 20% on 1,000,000, 20% on 10 million. Do you get my point? I want you to think percentage. And so many people don't go very far down the road of being an entrepreneur or looking at some of the things I'm going to give you today to do or tonight to do, because they look at them and they go, well, that's just going to be $5. That's just going to be $10. Big deal. And people will laugh. They'll be like, and maybe even your parents, maybe your friends will be like, well, you just made $10. Who cares? That was a lot of effort for $10. I need you to not listen. I need you to only see the percentage of return, the ROI, return of investment. I just need you to see that and go, you know what? You're right. It's only 10 bucks. That's okay. It's only 10 bucks. But you know what? I made 10 bucks and it's called profit. I profited 10 bucks. Someday you'll play with bigger money. Someday you'll make bigger plays. Someday you'll make bigger investments, and your $10 will be $1,000 or 100,000 or 1,000,000, and no one's laughing then. But the thought process to know how to do it is what's golden. The mindset to go, oh, I can make 10% on that. Later in life, all you're doing is changing the amounts. The principle of making money, the principle of forcing profit, you can't learn that a different way. Like that's what's going to be golden for you. So here's some ideas, right? Failure is knowledge. Like I failed at that business and I lost money at it. But what I learned from it has made me a whole lot more money than the 120 grand that I lost. Failure is knowledge. And so when you go, okay, I did this and this and this, and I failed, I didn't make a profit. I only got my investment back. You know, I had $50 on this and I only got $50 back, or I got $48 back. So I lost $2. That's okay. What did you learn? You work to learn before you work to earn. Think about that lady who becomes a great surgeon. She pays to go to medical school. She pays to go to college. She's becoming a resident. She's working to learn so that when she's done with school, she can become a full-on doctor or a full-on surgeon, and then she could work to learn. And then she could make hundreds of dollars an hour. But she might go to school for years working to learn. Think about somebody becoming an electrician. They might be an apprentice electrician and not make very much money. They're working to learn. They're getting experience. And if you have an opportunity in your life to gain experience over money, now's the time to do it. When you're 50 or 60 or 45 or 70, it's hard to make that decision. You have to work for money. You have bills and expenses and car payments and mortgages and kids and all those things. Some of you, your parents can't make the decision to work for experience right now. They have to work for money because they got bills that are due. You have the luxury of youth. The luxury of youth states that you can work for experience. And experience today can be multiples of money tomorrow. Don't waste it. It's a short time frame. If you're 15, you got 10 years, maybe 15 years. You don't have very much time, and it goes so fast. It goes quick. Don't waste it. It's hard to work for experience when you're 35. Like you got, a wife or a husband and you got stuff, right? Like it changes. Like your viewpoint changes. I want you to ask questions. If I were to give you an assignment, the assignment would be this: interview a business owner every week. Just interview a business owner. Come up with the 5 or 10 questions you might ask a business owner. One question, I'll give you some of the questions. One question would be, why'd you start the business? What was the why in the beginning? Number 2 would be this: what did you learn starting the business? Number 3, and you can go back and watch this, so I'm moving fast. Number 3, if you could go back today, what would you do different? So let's say you're interviewing somebody who owns a store and they've owned it for 10 years. You'd say, well, knowing what you know today, what would you do different about the business if you went back 10 years? Another question that people forget to ask when they're interviewing successful people is, what did you do right? A lot of people ask, what'd you do wrong? What'd you regret? What would you do different? And those are good. Those are good. Nothing wrong with that. But just don't forget to ask, what did you do right? What did you do that worked? What did you do that had a compound effect or a compounding interest, if you would? What'd you do right? The last question would be, and I mean, you could ask 7 or 8 or 10, like your choice, depends on the business, right? But one question I've learned to ask people is, what question should I have asked if I knew more? And you might be shocked what people will tell you. I use that question interviewing people. If I'm interviewing them for a job or a role that I'm trying to fill, at the end of the interview, I'll ask, what question should I have asked you that I didn't? If I'm interviewing a top performer, somebody who does great at their job, at the end, I'll ask, what didn't I ask that I should have? And sometimes it takes you down this incredible road of this conversation that you would have never had with this person. Other times they go, I can't think of anything. That's okay. What if you interviewed a business owner once a week? You could start with your parents' friends. You could ask them, hey, who do we know that own businesses? Who do we know that run giant businesses? That doesn't always have to just be the owner. It could be somebody who works at a high level in the business. But the knowledge that you gain from it is what you're going to use your entire life. And that's where you're learning. You're becoming a student of business. You're becoming a student of making money. Next one, be observant. And I want you to think like the owner. Remember I said I'll be in businesses and I'll think to myself, like, how would I do this or how would I do that? And there's an acronym, like, when you take a word and the letters of the word mean something. Somebody really wealthy taught me this. And he said, Cody, I want you to be cool, Kool. So I want you to write it down. He said, just be cool. And as dumb as it sounds, I mean, he probably taught me this 15 years ago, and I still think it. Just be cool. And it's be a keen observer of life. Be a keen observer of life. So be a sharp observer, be a sharp watcher, be a student, listen more than you talk. And being a keen observer of life when I'm in businesses has paid tremendously. Like you begin to see, well, I would have done this different, or this would have felt different as a customer, or this would have captured me and made sure that I came back again. Like think about all the business that people have that the person comes in and buys something, but they never come back to buy anything else. Return customers are the easiest path to profit. People you don't have to win again. People that come back and buy from you over and over and over again. And the most overlooked way, and this wasn't what I wanted to talk about, but so I got on the topic. The most overlooked way to build repeat customers is to be genuinely grateful that they bought something from you and tell them how important they are. It's fascinating that you could go to a store. Just watch your parents. Watch your parents. They go to a store and you're with them, and they spend hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars at a store. And the clerk or the person helping them or the manager or whoever it is that's doing the transaction just says, thanks, have a nice day, or just says, have a nice day, or nothing at all. But doesn't genuinely say, you know what? Hang on a second. Before we're done here, thank you so much for coming in. You're the only reason we have a job here. Thank you for spending so much money here. Thank you for buying this here. We know that you have other choices. There's other stores in town. There's other places in town. Thank you for coming to ours. What if every time you went to a restaurant, the manager or owner came out and came by the table and just said, you know what? Thank you guys for dining here. Do you come here a lot? You probably have some restaurants that you and your family go to over and over and over again. Does anybody make you feel special when you do? That's the most overlooked, easiest path to build repeat and return customers. Now, you got to have a good product, you got to have a good service, got to have good pricing, all those things, right? But you can't go wrong with treating people right. You can't move backwards by pushing people forward. Can't. The way people feel around you and the way people look at you and the way you make people feel is going to always be your easiest path to winning with people. And winning with people is the number one ingredient for being an entrepreneur. You could have an incredible product. You could have an incredible service. You have an incredible business. But if you can't win with people, it's going to be really hard to make money. Entrepreneurs end up having to be great with people. All right. So be an observer, right? As silly as it sounds, I get my hair cut at the exact same place over and over and over and over again. Every 2 weeks, I get my hair cut. And the person who's been cutting my hair has been cutting my hair for like 4 years. And I'll bet she doesn't have very many customers who come to her more often than I do. But she just moved from the studio or the salon that she worked at to a new one. And she sent me a message and just said, hey, here's my new studio. Here's my new salon. But I didn't move with her. She did a good job, but I didn't move with her, which means she loses me as a customer. And you think to yourself, what could she have done to gain me as a customer at the new shop? What could she have done that would have caused me to go see her at the new salon? As a business owner, I think about this all the time. I think, what would I do? And then I think, what am I not doing in my own businesses? When you begin to watch other businesses, you see what you would do. All right, here's another one. I want you to write business plans. Now, when you're writing business plans, don't complicate this thing. If you can't write a business plan on a couple of note cards like this, it's too complicated. You don't need a 10-page business plan. You're not asking a bank for a loan. You're not asking a bank for a loan. You're simply creating a business plan. Now, a business plan needs to have this, and I'm going to say it, and I want you to write it down. You can also come back and listen to it again. Number one, what is the problem that you've identified? What's the purpose of the business? Here's a dumb one. I'm going to open a car wash. What's the purpose of the business? People have dirty cars, and I'm going to solve their problem by offering a car wash. Don't be afraid to think that rudimentary. A problem at a restaurant is people are hungry, and I'm going to feed them. Like, I'm going to offer food. Now, there's other problems, right? Like, there's no Mexican restaurant within 10 minutes of here. I'm going to open a great Mexican restaurant here. If there's an incredible Mexican restaurant, you might not open one right next door. That might be silly. But you begin to think, what are the problems that I'm solving? You look at like a main road and you look at where gas stations are. There's a reason they are where they are. There's also a reason sometimes why there's a gas station here and one directly across the street. And you would think to yourself, if I opened a gas station, I wouldn't open one directly across the street, until you begin to watch traffic patterns and you go, wait, this one's too hard to get to because of the way the traffic pattern is. That's why it could support two. Anyway, so what is the problem what's the problem identified that it solves? Number two, what's the solution? How will you solve the problem? So what's the problem? And then how are you solving it? Number three, this is a rudimentary basic business plan, but it's a basic rudimentary plan that you can make as much money as you want to make with it. Don't complicate this. Number three, where do I get my leads, customers, prospects, whatever you want to call them? Where do I get my customers from? Every business plan needs to identify what the problem is, how it's going to solve the problem, and then where will the customers come from? Do I get them from marketing? Do I get them from Instagram? Do I get them on social media? Do I get them from my, what we call a sphere of influence, people I already know? That could be my customer. Is it families? If you're a Girl Scout, like when you're a kid and you're going to sell cookies, that's a business. And the customers almost always come from the parents. The parents buy a bunch of boxes of cookies. When you sold stuff at school, your parents were your number one customer. Your second customer was your family, like aunts, uncles, cousins, grandmas and grandfathers, all that kind of stuff. And then your third was you would go to work with your parents and you would sell cookies to the people at work. Like, where do the customers come from? And it's okay to not know an answer. It's okay to say, I'm not sure yet. But it's not okay to never answer it. You got to figure out, where will my customers come from? You could build an amazing business, but if you can't solve the problem of where will I get my leads from or my customers from, you're never going to make any money at it. An entrepreneur doesn't build something hoping customers will show up. This isn't the theory of, if I build it, they'll show up. Nope. I need you to answer the question, where will my customer come from? The next is this: what does my customer look like? Not just physically, but like, how are they? Like, what type of person are they? Who are they? Identify what your number one customer looks like. And you might have lots of different customers. You might have lots of different clients or lots of different types of people, but what does the main one look like, act like, walk like? The better you know them, the better you can market to them, the better you can serve them. Sometimes that has to do with the city you're in or the part of town that you're in or the type of business, but knowing your customer better is going to make you the most amount of money. All right, the next for the business plan, organizational model. Organizational model is easiest said this way: who does what and how? Who does what and how? So the organizational model, maybe you open a business of mowing lawns. Some of the richest people in America today are people that started mowing their neighbors' lawns when they were 12 years old. They built it into a business. And before they knew it, they had 25 lawns that they were taking care of. And then before they knew it, they had 30 lawns or 40 lawns, and they hired a friend to help mow them. Then they had to invest in a better lawnmower. And before you know it, they have a giant landscaping business. Don't overlook the power of time. Don't overlook the power of one step at a time forward. You don't go 0 to 100. I want you to go 0 to 5, and then 5 to 10, and then 10 to 15. Some of the highest thinking people I know, some of the smartest people I know when it comes to building things, don't ever build anything because they're unwilling to go 0 to 10. They insist on going 0 to 100 or 0 to 1,000. Most things don't work 0 to 100 or 0 to 1,000, so therefore they never do anything. What is the very next step? An entrepreneur who's successful thinks two ways. Number one, they think with the end in mind. What does this look like someday? Number two, but you can't stay there. Number two, what do I do next? How does this look in 10 years? That's called dreaming. What do I do tomorrow? That's called doing. Two different things. You got to do both. An incredible entrepreneur becomes good at both. I know where I'm going someday, but if I don't take this step, if I don't take this turn, I could talk about a destination all day long, but I'm never going to see it. Like, I'm never going to get there. I've got to put action and activity behind it. You see, being an entrepreneur is more than just being a dreamer. But every entrepreneur I know is a dreamer, but they're a dreamer and a doer. John Maxwell, one of my favorite authors, you ought to read his books, watch his YouTube videos. One of my favorite authors, John Maxwell, says dream believers are everywhere. Everyone's got a dream. Everybody you talk to has a dream of something they want to achieve in their life. They got lots of them. Dream believers are in abundance. Dream believers are everywhere. But dream buyers are hard to find. The people who are willing to pay the price to buy their dream, to put in the work, put in the effort, put in the time, get up every day when they feel like it's not working and go back at it, never quit and be relentless at it. Putting in the time, buying dreams, they're expensive. Most people don't want to do the work. They just like to dream the dream, but then never actually do it. That's not why you're here. All right, so organizational model. Who does what and how? If you're an entrepreneur, the who is almost always going to be you. Early on, it might only be you. Like, you might do everything. You might make the flyer. You might mow the lawn. You might do the lead generation of leaving the flyers on people's doors. You might do all of it. You might do the billing. You might do the collecting. You might do the money tracking. All of it. You might go and get the gas for the lawnmower. You get my point. You might do all of it. That doesn't mean that you don't understand it. It just means that there might be 10 jobs, just one face. Like, you might be doing all of it. Your mom or dad might be a real estate agent. That might be how they know me. A lot of real estate agents, there's lots of jobs that happen in a transaction or happen in buying a home or selling a home, but usually the realtor or the agent just wears a lot of hats. They do a lot of the jobs themselves. They might show the house. They might stage the house. They might do the paperwork. They might do the transaction. They might show it to the buyer. They might be the negotiator. You get my point. You might do more than one thing, and that's okay. You won't do it forever. All right, next is budget model. Any good business plan has a budget model, and the budget model, again, it can fit on a card. What am I going to charge? What am I going to spend? How do I find a profit? That's the basis. What am I going to charge people? What am I going to spend? How do I find a profit? The profit is the difference between what you pay and what you make, right? What you receive. You might get $100 from customers, but if you spent $100 to get $100, that's a zero profit, which doesn't mean it's bad. If that's day 1 or day 10 of your business, that might not be bad at all. A lot of businesses, they say, don't turn a profit for 2 years to 3 years. That doesn't mean that they only turn a profit in 2 or 3 years. It might take you a month to be profitable. The biggest business that I have today did not make a real profit for 4 years. I lost money. I put money in, put money in, put money in, put money in. That's what I mean by, are you willing to buy a dream? I had to work another job and find ways to make money over here to put money over here. Are you willing to invest in yourself? Even then, it still took me a few more years to actually make any real money. All right, so back to this. A budget model. What am I going to spend? What am I going to charge? Like, how does the money work? Anything that has to do with money. And again, it does not need to be complicated. It could be very basic. The next one is this. How am I going to follow up with my customer? How am I going to stay in touch with them so they come back and use me again? If that's the kind of business that you have. Now, if you have a lemonade stand and you're going to do a lemonade stand, which every young person in the country should do a lemonade stand, just because you understand it. Like, it's an easy, like, I'm going to buy the lemons. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I mean, and you might be 17 and go, Cody, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do a lemonade stand. I totally get it. That's fine. But you probably did a lemonade stand at some point in your life. But what am I going to do to follow up so I can earn repeat customers? You might not need to worry about that at a lemonade stand. But I want you to think, how do I follow up? How do I stay in touch? How do I keep them as a customer? How do I know they're going to use me again? How do I know they're going to come back? So if you can't, like, again, if you can't write those things on an index card, you've made it too complicated. It does not need to be this long Word document, PDF. Like, it doesn't need to be that. It doesn't need to be 15 pages. And remember, I want you to think profit and loss. I want you to think, what do I spend and what do I make? What do I receive? And then what's the difference? That becomes profit. And I want you to think percentage. I'm not too worried if you only make $5 and you go, Cody, I spent 4 hours and I made a $5 profit. You know what? High five, man. High five. And you might go, oh my gosh. And somebody who will never be an entrepreneur might go, well, yeah, but that's only $1.25 an hour. I don't need you to care about that. Don't care about that right now. Someday, you better care about that. If you're 50 and you're making $1.25 an hour at your business, you did it wrong. But right now, at your age, I just want you to think profit. That's it. You got lots of time to make it go from $1.25 an hour to $125 an hour to $1,250 an hour. Got it? I just want you to think, how do I make money? How do I make profit? Think percentage. Now, here's some ideas for making money right now, whether you're 14, 17, 20, it doesn't really matter. I want you to sell stuff. Every entrepreneur's got to sell something, whether you're selling food or you're selling services or you're selling ideas or you're selling help, like whatever it is, we're all selling something. And I just want you to get in the habit of selling stuff. I want you to go and take the easiest low-hanging fruit, if you will, and take that first. Look at old clothes that don't fit you anymore and go and ask your parents, be like, hey, can I sell that shirt? It doesn't fit anymore. And they go, we'd give it to Goodwill. And you'd go, I know, but let me sell it. And you go and you create an account on eBay, or you go and you create an account on Bebop. And what you do is you sell it. And maybe you get $2 for that t-shirt or 50 cents for that t-shirt, and you charge 99 cents for shipping. Like you'll get good at it, and you'll make a mistake and you'll sell something for $10 and it'll cost you $12 to ship it. And you'll be like, oh man, darn it. I made $10 and it cost me $12 to ship the darn thing. I lost $2. You know what? Now's the time to do it, because the $2 you lose, you're never going to make that mistake again. That's a cheap lesson. Go make the mistake. That's the easiest one to do. When my son, who's 19, when he moved to San Francisco on his own, he lived there, and San Francisco is an expensive city. He would go to Goodwill, and he would go to the Goodwill store, and he would pick things up that he knew he could buy for $4 or $5 at Goodwill, but sell it online for $10. And he knew his customer. His customer was somebody who wanted to buy kind of vintage, kind of cool, kind of hipstery type clothes. And he knew what to buy. He knew his customer. He was very clear. He was showing me what he was selling. And I'm like, Gavin, I would never buy that. And he goes, exactly. You are not my customer, Dad. He knew exactly who his customer was. The better you know people, the better you identify it, easier it is to sell. And so he'd buy clothes. He'd go to Goodwill and he'd buy some pants for $10, but he knew he can get 15 online plus shipping. Go and play with it. Go and play with the ideas. Obviously talk to your parents. You know, if you're 12 years old, you might not just go to Goodwill on your own and look around, but you get my idea. You get the point, right? Craigslist. Here's something else he did. And you could do the exact same thing, and you should. Even if you don't do it, I want you to get in the habit of looking for it. Go to Craigslist every day and look at the free stuff. Just go and look what's for free. In Facebook, there's in most cities, there's a group called Buy Nothing, and then the city that you live in. So I live in Lake Oswego, which is a part of Portland. And so there's a group on Facebook called Buy Nothing Lake Oswego. And what it means is it's just where neighbors and community says, hey, I looked on there the other day and someone said, you know what? I don't need this drill anymore. It's free. Anybody who wants this drill, send me a message and you can just have the thing. I looked at the drill and I'm like, you could sell that thing on Craigslist for $15 and have it be gone today. You could sell it on eBay for $10. You can go on eBay and type in the name of that drill and you'll see people selling it. You get an idea for what it's worth. And there's nothing wrong with taking something for free and then selling it. Now, you might want to talk with your parents and make sure they're okay with it. And if you feel bad about it, you might even tell someone, hey, I'd love the drill. And when you pick it up, you might say, you know what? I'm learning how to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a business owner someday. Just so you know, I'm going to sell the drill. You might choose to say that. I don't think you have to, but you talk with your parents about it. Like, you do whatever's appropriate for you, but you get my point. Now, I think you ought to look at the free section of Craigslist and the free section of like those Facebook groups, even if you don't go and get anything. just to be in the habit, just to be thinking, what could I do? What could I do? What could I do? One of the things that my son did was he would look at the free furniture and he would go pick it up. And he would, like, a lot of times it'd be like a nightstand or a dresser, and it would be kind of rickety, right? Like kind of shaky. And a lot of times all he had to do was tighten up the screws, tighten up the bolts. He would sand the furniture down, like it had watermarks on it, or like little rings from the glass, like the cup of water you set on it or whatever. Sometimes it just needed to be painted, like it was chipped or needed to be restained. And so what he would do is he would clean the furniture up and stain it or paint it or take care of it, and then he'd sell it. So he'd pick up a free piece of furniture as long as he knew he could fix it, and then he'd resell it for 20 bucks or 40 bucks. And that was how he made money. One way he made money when he moved to a new city. And that's an entrepreneur thinking. That's somebody who thinks like an entrepreneur. And you just find ways to do it. Even if you bought it for $10 and sold it for 20, you've doubled your money. And if you could do that with a $10 bill, and you could do it over and over and over, and you get good at identifying opportunity, you're going to do it with $1,000 someday. You're going to do it with $1 million someday. But if you don't do it with $10, you may never do it with $1 million. And you almost have to drown out the noise that people will say, and they're like, that's not worth your time. Listen, I'm 15. I'm just learning. I'm 17. I'm just learning. Like, what am I supposed to do? Watch TV? I'm making nothing watching TV. My ROI, my return of investment, is $0 scrolling through Instagram doing nothing. My return on investment over here might only be $2 or $3, but it's 20%. And if I can make 20%, sooner or later, I'll make 20% on bigger money. Goodwill, remember, like Gavin did, go to Goodwill and look for opportunities. Look for things that you know you could move quickly. Look for things that you could sell quickly. If you follow Gary Vaynerchuk on social media, and I love him, Gary V is what he goes by. He'll say, like, some of the best advice he gives younger adults and teens is go find stuff for free or for $1 or $2 and sell it. Like, you can find a whole set of dishes at Goodwill for a couple of dollars. And then maybe you could sell those dishes on Craigslist for 10 bucks. Like, just begin to think. And again, what's the worst thing that happens? You've got some dishes that you end up losing $5 on. So what? What you learn from it could make you millions. This is just about learning how to be an entrepreneur. This is an exercise. It's like a muscle. You don't go and lift a weight once and go, great, where's my muscle? Nope. You lift a weight and you do it again and again and again and again. And it takes time. You got to be patient with this. All right, stocks and bonds. If you want to get into stocks and bonds, the easiest way for you to get into stocks and bonds, like, especially if you're not 18, like, unless you use your parents' account, you probably can't trade stocks and bonds, right? But you can get free accounts. Almost every online trading platform, whether it be Robinhood or TD Ameritrade or Scott Trader, which turned into, whatever it is that you want to go use, like, spend 5 minutes online. You're great at this. Spend 5 minutes researching it. You'll find one that you like. Almost every one of them has a platform to do it with play money. Has a platform to do it where you can buy and sell stock, but it's not for real. Like, it's just pretend. And what you could do is you could begin to get good at taking, like, you're not going to make any real money, but you're not going to lose any real money. You can say, all right, I'm going to buy this stock and hold it. And then you look at the account every day and it's all pretend, but it tells you what you would have made or you would have lost. And before I started investing in stocks, that was how I did it. Like, I did it. I didn't do it for very long because I was ready to make money, but I was ready to lose money too. Like, both of those things are true. But for a few days, like, I would just go in, I think it was a couple of weeks, I would go in and I'd buy something for pretend and just watch it. Be like, all right, would I have made money or lost money here? And you'll get good. Like, you'll get a feeling for it. And you'll get an idea for what type of trader do I want to be? Am I going to be a day trader who might buy and sell the same stock multiple times a day? Am I going to be a trader who buys and holds? Am I going to hold it for a week or a month or a year? Am I going to hold it for 10 years? What type of trader do I want to be? By the way, be careful where you get your information from. Be careful who you listen to. If they're not making money at it, then you might not want to take their advice. That does not mean, and I need you to hear me on this, that does not mean that you should be flippant. It does not mean that you should be rude. It does not mean that you should be disrespectful. You can say, oh my gosh, great point. Thank you very much. Great point. Thank you. You can say that and be sincere and still not take their advice. If they're making money at stocks and they give you advice, you better listen. But the funny thing is, people love to give advice that they know nothing about. But your job is just to be kind. Your job is just to be graceful. Your job is to be gracious and go, thanks, that's a great idea. Now, you might not ever use it, but don't argue with people. Like, usually arguing with people, you just both lose. So quit arguing. Just, oh, great, good idea, thank you. And then I'm never going to do it that way. Like, you don't tell them that, but you just think that, right? They don't know. And the cool thing is, you have to live your life. They don't. So if you want to play with stocks and bonds, do that. Here's what I know. You will probably not build wealth. If you want to get wealthy and make a ton of money and help a lot of people with it, by the way, the more money you make, the more people you can help. That's how I see money. You will probably not get rich with interest, like at a bank. You have to have so much money sitting in the bank to make 2% a year interest for it to be any amount of money. Most people who build wealth build it from ideas and then selling the idea, meaning a business. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is this. I want you to research what you're interested in. Go and read, how did they do it? There's a great podcast that you should listen to that's called How They Built It. And I don't love a whole lot of podcasts, but podcasting is podcasting is a new way to make money. People build podcasts and then they sell advertising on it. And today it's probably about 6 or 7 years old, like in its infancy stage, but 10 years from now, you'll see more and more and more. Being an influencer on Instagram didn't exist 10 years ago. If it did, it was like brand new. But today, you could be an influencer on Instagram. Now, there's ways to get there and ways to do it and ways that work and ways that don't. But my point is, research it. Go and research. Like, if you were to research one company a day, spend 10 minutes online, 10 minutes. How did Apple start? How did Disney start? How did Ford Motor Company start? How did Pita Pit start? How did Pizza Hut start? You get my point. Just Google it. You're amazing at it. Use the Google machine, use the computer, use the internet machine. And what you'll find is you'll begin to learn where they came from. How did Harley Davidson start? Like, where'd they come from? And you begin to become a student of it. Here's what I've learned about entrepreneurs as well. The ones who won't spend any time researching, the ones who won't spend any time learning, don't usually spend very much time earning either. They're full of ideas. You'll meet lots of people who have lots and lots of ideas. They just never do anything with it. You got to do the work too, man. You got to put in the effort. And this is where you put in. So like, if you're an athlete, if you're an amazing athlete, you watch game film. If you're an amazing quarterback, you watch film about how your team plays so you can research. You watch film and video about how the other team plays so you can beat them on Sunday. While being an entrepreneur, your equivalent of watching film and watching videos, like, there's no film anymore. That's an old saying, but it's still the same saying. In our day and age, being an entrepreneur, it's researching companies, where they came from, how they built it. That, like, kind of like how I said, interviewing business owners. Now, if you're 40 and you go, hey, I'd love to interview you, you're a business owner, they might give you an interview, they might give you some time, but usually they don't. But if you're 15 and you go, hey, I really want to be a business owner someday, how'd you start this veterinary clinic? How'd you start this doctor's office? Most of them will sit down with you. Most of them will give you so much more time than they'd ever give me. They probably wouldn't even call me back. And if they did, they might spend 5 minutes with me. But if I'm 15 or I'm 20 or I'm 12 and I go, listen, sir, ma'am, I'm really interested in how you did this, they'll give me a whole lot of time and they'll give me some really good advice. And then you begin to watch and look for the advice you get over and over and over again. There's always the anomaly. There's always the one that nobody else is like them. That advice is tough to take, but the advice you hear again and again and again, and you see common themes, that's the advice you could build any business you want to with. All right. Hope you got something from this today. Go make money with something. Whether you're going to sell book reports to your parents, Gavin did that with me. for years. If he read a book and wrote me a report, I'd give him $20 or $50. Like, we negotiated it. Sometimes it was $5. But go to your parents, like, hey, mom, dad, whoever it is that takes care of you. If I read this business book, if I read this self-help book, will you do this for me? For years, I paid Gavin for grades. Now, some parents don't agree with that, and there's nothing wrong with that either. There's no right and no wrong. But maybe you could get some money for your grades. Like, hey, I'm a B student, but if I become an A student, can I earn this or can I earn that? It's my job. Like, that might be a play for you with your parents. There's lots of ways to make money. I just want you in the habit of, how do you make money? And you begin to watch and you begin to see patterns, and you'll begin to see opportunity. If you get good at seeing opportunity, I don't need you to be good at acting on it until you're good at seeing it. Then you'll begin to do it. So first you got to know it, then you do it, then you earn it. All right, guys, it's been my pleasure. Our final session, our 7th session, will be 2 weeks from today. So that's going to be May 13th. May 13th, 2 weeks from today, 5 o'clock Pacific time. We're just going to spend about 30 minutes and we're going to tie together any loose ends that I felt like we left in these 6 sessions. Hopefully you've gotten some value from it. I've loved doing it. So our final session will be 2 weeks from today, 5 o'clock. Again, remember, you have to sign up for each one individually so we can track it. And I hope you got something from today. Go out and do something amazing. If you do something and you want to share it with me, if your parents are cool with it, ask them permission if it's appropriate. My Instagram is Cody Gibson 1, just the numeral 1 at the end. My email is codygibson@kw.com. Get permission if it's appropriate. But I'd love to see it. If you make some money on something, send me a copy of it. Send me a screenshot of it. But just go and try some stuff. You can't do anything right now in that world that's going to sink you forever. There's no failure with this, only learning. All right, have fun. See you in 2 weeks.